The idea for Duel came to me on the day that President Kennedy was assassinated. A friend and I were playing golf over in Fillmore, and when we came in for lunch, we heard about the assassination, and we were so distressed by the news that, of course, we forgot about the golf game and started going home. And as we were going through this narrow pass on the way back home, this huge truck started tailgating us. And we went faster and faster. He went faster and faster. And we were screaming out the windows with as much fury about the assassination as about him trying to kill us. And finally, my friend pulled off into a dirt siding, and his car spun around, and this truck went flying past. And we were really shaken up by it. But having the true writer's mind, within a few moments, I thought, man gets chased by a truck. And I wrote on an envelope. I didn't even have a piece of paper with me. He had some mailer, and I wrote on the back of one of the envelopes the idea. And for a period of time, I presented the idea to a number of series on television, and they thought it was too limited. They said, no, there's just not enough there. And finally, I gave up on that idea, pitching it for a television idea, and wrote it as a novelette. And it was published in Playboy. And then Universal picked it up, and I did the screenplay. When I wrote the story, Duel, to me, it was just a straight suspense story. I named the main character Man with some sort of foolish idea that I was making a metaphor for mankind, which didn't last. The fact that you never saw the driver, which was in my script, but in my novelette, he saw his name on the side of the truck. His name was Keller, which I thought was a clever way of saying killer. But I never visualized it in any way as anything but a straight suspense story, what a normal man would do when presented with such a circumstance, how he would respond. And finally, of course, even though he was a totally non-heroic type, how he finally caused the man's destruction who had been trying to kill him.
Oh boy.
I'm a visual writer. When I wrote the story Duel, I saw it happening in my head like a movie, so I could transpose it to script form very easily. When I write a novel, I see it in front of my mind's eye as though I were watching a movie and I'm just describing the movie. So I am a visual writer, and I never had difficulty from the very start. When I finally decided to write it as a novelette, what I did was I drove from my house to Ventura and back with a tape recorder and just recorded everything I saw, because I knew I couldn't very well write a whole story and imagine what he saw. So that was very helpful. That's how I got the story written, because I had a route that he followed. I had no specific character image in my mind for the driver, except that this was like a pre-road rage story. But what was interesting is that when I went to watch them shooting, several people came up to me and said the same thing had happened to them. In one case, a truck driver actually waved him on past, and another car was coming in the other direction. At one point, I thought that there was not enough material in the novelette for a full-length television movie, which at that time was 90 minutes. So I thought perhaps I would have to have the man's wife with him, so there could be an interchange between them. And I don't know who talked me out of it, but I'm certainly glad they did, because it would not have worked well at all. It was much better the way it was. But there were scenes that were briefly told in the story, which I utilized and expanded them for the film. The sequence in the coffee shop was one of them. That was where I first met Stephen. And I went in the cafe, and it was so realistic. I thought, well, the cafe is open for the day, and they're just shooting around their real customers. I didn't realize that they were all actors, because they looked so good. They're so real.
Would you mind checking those radiator hoses?
I'll do that. Take a look at my snakes if you have time.
My wife and I, in driving across the country, had stopped at gas stations that had all these things. And so obviously it was our decision to put one in there. And then how it was staged was Stevens, the truck knocking over the phone, the tarantula on Dennis Weaver's leg. I know I had him trying to call the sheriff and the truck coming, so that was in the script. But all the little niceties of detail were Stevens. I believe they had difficulty finding someone to play the part, so as I was told, they shut down the series McCloud so that Dennis Weaver could do it. And I thought he was perfect for the part. I mean, he was every man. When he looked frightened, there's a scene of him going up the hill where the car goes slower and slower, and he's screaming at it, and Stephen has these extreme close-ups of him. It really is nerve-wracking.
Please, please.
When you examine it, it isn't really a duel until the very last few moments of the script. It's like a flight before that. A flight from terror and a flight from a nemesis who is threatening his life. So in that sense, it's not a duel with two equal protagonists. But then towards the end, the hero finds the courage and the ability to make it a duel and destroy the truck driver. In my novelette, the truck had gasoline in it, and when it went down, it exploded into flame. And obviously they chose to have the truck empty, and infinitely better to show in the slow motion all the way down the cliff to the bottom. It was marvelous, a marvelous sequence, and the sounds were incredible. I was at the Museum of Radio and Television. Billy Goldenberg, who did the music, was there, and I said, Billy, I don't want to offend you, but I don't think of the score for Duel as music. Is it music? And he said, no, it's not music. He said, Stephen spoke to me and said, I don't want music, I don't want melody, I just want noise, I want sounds. And that's the way he wrote the score, and tremendously effective. I was delighted that the film ended very much as the story did, where the man's exaltation is suddenly reduced as he realizes what he has just gone through and what he has just done. I wrote short stories and novels for a period of about 20 years. Duel was the last one. I didn't realize it, but the theme of my stories is one man against insuperable odds. I have repeated it over and over and over again. I didn't know it at the time. And by the time I wrote Duel, I did know it. And I thought, well, this is it. This is the ultimate of one man facing some terrible opposition. And so I stopped writing short stories then, and I never wrote any more.